ahead of time. And with that, let us go on to a general overview of what we're going to cover today. So we're first going to talk about resumes, and we'll talk about kind of the essential sections you want on your resume formatting, how to list skills and experiences, examples of resumes that we used when we were looking for research positions, and then also what is a CV. After that, we'll have a Q&A, and then we'll move on to cover letters, where we'll talk about the essential paragraphs, formatting tips, and also examples of cover letters. And then we'll have our second Q&A. So let's talk about resumes. So some of the essential sections you want on your resume is your contact information. That should kind of be, up front. So that's your name, phone number, email, web page, online portfolio, anything like that. And then you want relevant experience. So your job title, company name, date, your duties, your accomplishments. You should also list out your education and write out your schools in reverse chronological order. So that means the most recent school goes first, and try not to use high school. If your GPA is pretty good, and that depends on your major, but probably something above like a 3.3, you should put that with, under education. And, if you graduated with honors, you were in a university honors program, you're on the dean's list, make sure you mention that. Now, for liberal arts majors, it's okay if you don't have as many hard skills, as long as you back it up with a writing sample, which you can also attach to your resume. A lot of liberal arts professors want to see their students having good writing skills when they're going to mentor them. So it's a really good way of showing that you're up to snuff. And now let's talk about listing skills and experiences. For a lab position, such as a STEM lab, it can be really helpful to write out the relevant coursework you took, how many quarters and semesters you took, any actual labs taken. So if you're a chemistry major and you took organic chemistry, that's a good idea to put. Similarly, if you're a biology major. Now, if you learned any skills that could be helpful, make sure you write that down. So, for bio major, that could be something like conjugation, running a gel, or for chemistry, it could be, using the NMR machine, using, using certain techniques for, and for other examples. You can also list personal skills that would be applicable for a lab, like things like attentive, able to multitask, reliable. Now, you might think, well, wouldn't this come off as kind of cheesy? And if you're really deliberate on what you put and you can back that up with actual examples, then it's not as bad. You can, because you can list those things, and then during the interview or during your cover letter, you can expand on those topics. And if you have any certifications that might be relevant, make sure you list that, right? So if you have any lab safety certification, CPR, if you took classes on Coursera or any online university and they give you a certification, that's also useful. Now for experiences, list anything that's relevant towards the field the lab is in. This isn't, although it is nice if it's relevant to the field you're working in, even if you have, experience like you worked part-time at a grocery store while supporting yourself through community college, that's still great to put on, even though this is for a research lab, because you're showing that, you're able to hold down a job while studying, right? And it's all these things are good points that the person interviewing you can, bring up during your interviews with them. Now, optional sections include references if asked for. So that'd be just their name, contact info, their job title. And if you're part of any organizations, especially if you have an officer or leadership role, that's always nice to put on. But make sure you have a brief description on what the club does. You can't really assume that they'll recognize acronyms. And now when it comes to formatting, most people don't really recommend a super flashy resume, right? A resume with a lot of colored elements. and they'll say to keep it plain with black and white. We would say it's okay to add a little splash of color, maybe, underlining something in a different color or separating certain sections using, like a blue line or something. But it should be mild. Now, resumes should fit one page because the whole point of a resume is that someone can kind of glance at it in 30 seconds and know what you've done and what you're capable of. So, use strong action words when you describe your activities. You want to quantify your experiences and, talk about specific and precise adjectives. And for all sections, make sure you use reverse chronological order. So the most recent thing you did first. And of course, one of the most important things is proofread. Have other people look at your resume. Have, maybe your parents or your mentors or your other peers look over them. They can give you a lot of advice that you didn't think of when you were creating it. Now, that being said, the ICC, which is the Career Center at UC Davis, has a lot of sample resumes, including those for research assistant positions that are great to serve as templates and as, for their examples. And one of the officers can actually link that in the chat. So you can just go to their website and just take a look. They have a ton. Now we can go into some examples of resumes from the current officer team. So this is one from the VP of the club, Matthew Wong. And he, as we can see here, he kind of listed his education first, most recent first, right? So now he's a UC Davis, being a senior. So this is GPA. And then in De Anza, where he transferred, his community college where he transferred from, he listed his GPA there, along with relevant coursework. And then he has his experiences where he goes into, each of the things he did. And, when it comes to, on the left-hand side, the skills, he really concisely explains the kind of techniques he learned when he was in lab, and along with soft skills that he picked up. And if you look at the top left, you see all his contact information right there. And it's really, if you just glance at this for 30 seconds, you get a really good idea of what you can bring up with him if you're going to interview him. Similarly, this is my resume. So it kind of follows a very similar style. I have my education first with, the most recent things I did, along with my experiences and my projects. And on the right-hand side, my skills, where I specifically list out things that I've done. And even some of the, soft skills, like can work under pressure, able to multitask. I specifically selected those phrases because I know I can back that up with some of the experiences I've had. And then, we also have, my coursework section where I talk about all the coursework I've taken at both my community college and at UC Davis.
Yeah, and so similarly, so I started off with name and contact info on the top. On the left, I put my experiences, where I volunteered at and how long. And on the bottom, my education, reverse chronological order with Davis and my community college. I made sure to put my GPA as well as what quarters I was on the dean's list. And then on the right side, I put any relevant coursework. I'm a bio major, so I tried to keep it the coursework that's relating to that field and what I was taking at the moment. And then for skills, I went through all the lab manuals that I used during my lower division courses, and I actually did myself. So if I've done it multiple times and I feel pretty confident in it, I used adjectives like proficient. And if I did it maybe once or twice, but I'm not super confident in it, I used familiar, and just to show that I at least know how it works, and given the opportunity, I could learn more in depth about it in the lab. And then on the bottom right, as a unique skill, I put my knowledge of Russian and French, as it's a pretty unique skill to be multilingual.
And now we'll start talking about CVs. And one of our officers, Shetu, will talk about that now.
Thank you. So in this section, we're going to be talking about curriculum vitae, also known as CV. So basically, a CV provides a summary of your experience and skills. And typically, CVs are for entry-level candidates. And you might be asking the question, how is this different from a resume? So resume are usually a one-page document that provides an overview of your previous roles, skills, and professional work experience. On the other hand, CV is typically a longer and a more detailed document that focuses largely on your academic work. And CV is usually intended to be submitted for jobs in, a position in scientific research, academia, and medical fields. And some fields, for example, if you're applying for a graduate school to get your master's degree, get into a PhD program, or go to medical school, CV is going to be that tool that will help you talk about yourself in a positive manner and also show off your skills, basically. Yeah. So CV should be, I'm not done yet. Go back. That's fine. I can talk about it from here. So basically, CV is when you design a CV, you're thinking about what is the employer looking for. So when you list out your skills, you basically telling your skills and experiences to that specific position. If you're applying for a research position at UC Davis, for example, for to be a research assistant in the field of cancer, for example, you'd be listing the things that are relevant. In the case of resume, you're talking about, for example, retail job you had before. That is not relevant to the position you're going to be having at the moment. So you don't list out things that are, not relevant to the current one. So it's mainly focusing on your academic experiences. So CV is a valuable tool that would let you land an interview, because if you design your CV in a well thought out manner, it's going to create this positive first impression, because the employer is going to be looking at your CV first before they meet you. So that helps you stand out compared to other candidates. It also helps employers assess your skills and performances in a variety of ways. In case you're lacking in a specific area, for example, if you didn't have a research experience in the past and you're applying for a research position, that is okay, because what other skills do you have that you would think will be beneficial in the current job you're gonna get? So that is a whole, basically draw the full picture about you and your experiences. CV also helps you assess areas of weakness in yourself. So when you list out everything you did in the past, that helps you see if there are areas you can improve on to be a well-rounded candidate for that job. So keep your CV short and clean, because a well-written CV will help you go a long way. And there are many online resources you can use for pre-made CV templates to make your CV look more professional. So what do you include on CV? So most of the contents you put on a CV are quite similar to a resume. For example, your full name, contact information. Over here on my right, I have an example of a CV, and you have the professional title. What are you doing at the moment? If you're like an undergraduate research, you can put that on there, and a small CV summary. What are your research interests? Where'd you graduate from, or what school are you attending? You can put out under education. If you have any publications, both academic papers and books, you can put that on there as well. Teaching or lecturing experience, if you've been a tutor in the past, that is something that is academic, so you can put that in there. And also work experiences. For example, if you've been working at the UC Davis Medical Center as a researcher, that is a good thing to put on. On the other hand, if you had a past experience, for example, in the retail area, that is again not relevant. So you do not put those kind of work experiences in your CV. If you have attended any conferences, did you make any presentations? or poster presentations at a conference somewhere else. You can put that in there. Any skills you have, communications, teamwork, all those things would be going under skills section. If you have any certificates you have, are you bilingual? Do you speak Spanish, for example? Dennis speaks Russian, right? That is very impressive. So things like that you can put on your CV that would make you more appealing for the employer, right? Any grants and awards? Do you have any awards? That is a great thing to put on because that is an award. You're good at something, right? So references, again, this is something that is optional unless requested. It's not mainly, you have to put it on there. Just if you're confident in yourself, you can just put it in there. So another example here. This is my CV. This is the CV that helped me get like different positions. When I was at community college, I was a student volunteer at Kaiser Hospital. I basically did the same CV and I was building it up. So next I was a STEM tutor at Merritt College. I talk about in detail what I did. Again, the difference between CV and resume, as you can see, we have more explanation of that specific position you have and more depth. As a tutor, I talk about what I did. As a health coach at Ashland Free Medical Clinic, I talk about my interactions in detail. Board advisor here at Transfer Research Society, I talk about what we do as a society, right? Then I have my current position, Cure Research Fellow, what I did, my membership presented here, poster there, what I did, publications, and all those things go in the CV. And this kind of gives you a picture, okay, I'm talking about my specific experience and how I can benefit from it, right? So, yeah, that wraps up the CV section. And next, our officer, Nam, will proceed to our Q&A.
Okay, hello everybody. So same thing as last time. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please raise your hand. If not, you can ask your question in the chat and I will read them out loud. Okay, question in the chat. What is the difference between a cover letter and a resume?
Good question. So I would say think of a cover, and we'll go into this a little bit more. But think of a cover letter as more of a personalized, like a written prose by you to someone talking about why they should take a look at you, right? So a resume might just list what you've done, but a cover letter connects it together because you can actually go into more detail through, the kind of paragraphs you make. You can be like, oh, I worked this job and I learned these skills, and I think these skills will be helpful in your lab because your lab probably is this. So it really kind of offers you to expand more on your resume, basically.
Any other questions? All right. We'll have another Q&A session after this next portion of the presentation. So we can jump into our next portion, which will be talking about cover letters. So to start off, as Sudev mentioned, so a cover letter, it basically is usually used in tandem with a resume or a CV, and it allows you to personalize and connect the experiences that you've listed in your resume towards the specific position that you're applying to, and to basically personalize you and show a little bit of your passion towards that specific position. So we don't have a specific template for a cover letter, as we really want to emphasize that you want to personalize it to each specific position. It's not a really good idea to have one template for any position you're applying to. But this is a list of some essential topics that you want to include in some way in your cover letters. So to start off in your first paragraph, you want to include who you are, what school you go to, what your major and year is, and then you want to talk about the job title that you're applying to and how you heard about this position. And then you want to talk about why you're interested in the position. And this is your opportunity to be specific and use it as an opportunity to demonstrate your passion for a specific field and show that you're really interested in getting into this lab and doing this specific research. And then last, you want to include why you think you're qualified, and it should be pretty short and to the point, and kind of like a thesis statement. So then in the second paragraph, you basically want to describe 1 to 3 experiences, which can be from your resume, that demonstrate some job-specific skills and qualifications that would be beneficial in this lab. And you really want to try to demonstrate for each of these experiences what about it makes you a good fit and what it will help you bring to the lab and exactly what you got from those experiences that would be beneficial in this lab. And try not to restate that short thesis from the first paragraph in the process. So in the third paragraph, you want to summarize with your final interest and how you fit into this lab and how this position will benefit you in the future, whether it aligns with your future career goals in psychology or medicine or agriculture. And then you also want to include availability and the best way to reach you, whether that's over email or phone. And then you want to thank the PI for consideration for their time in reading your cover letter and your resume, and any other practical remarks which could be relevant towards this specific position, whether you're working on a lab certification or planning on taking a class that correlates with the field that you're planning on applying to the lab for, or if you're visiting the Davis area soon. Something like that that will make you look like you're committed in learning more about this field and trying to get more involved in this kind of work. And at the end, you want to include a closing signature, sincerely, best regards, and your name. And if you have the opportunity, you could also include a handwritten signature. Now onto some formatting and some tips. So kind of like with the resume, you try to keep the cover letter around 1 page long and to use the same header for resume and cover letter if possible, since they're usually come in a tandem. Try to be formal and not to be too wordy with it. You only have 1 page to write out everything. So it's one thing that you have to strategize with. Try to tailor each letter, like I said, to each specific position, not to have a fill in the blank type letter, as it's pretty easy to tell apart when a letter is not being super specific for each position. And try not to summarize the resume. Use it as an addition and as another tool where you can take things that you took from the resume and amplify them by explaining what exactly this one experience did for you personally. And it allows you to demonstrate your enthusiasm and excitement to be involved in the project and any unique skills that you think would be very beneficial for the PI to take you on for. And also show that you've done your own research, that you've checked out the PI's website, read their papers. This is the perfect opportunity to do so. And also try not to overuse subjective adjectives like most, best, things like that, and quantify instead as much as you can. Also, don't exaggerate your skills and experience, as in research, most PIs and researchers expect that you don't actually have a ton of experience and that they're ready to teach you on the spot once you get accepted into the lab. Now we're gonna go over some cover letter examples from our officers. And as a side note, we didn't actually use these cover letters in the positions that we got an offer for. These are just some examples for you to gauge how a cover letter should look like.
So from one of our officers, Matt. His cover letter, as we can see, it's 1 page long. And there's some similarities to a resume, but he's expanding on his topics that are covered there. So, he talks about, his laboratory skills, his experience volunteering, and then if you look at the end of his second paragraph, he says, I have an eagerness to better myself by experiencing failure and learning from my mistakes. And in his third paragraph, he talks about his goals. He talks about why he wants this opportunity. And it's a really good way of just showing that, I have these experiences and this is why I want to work for you. Similarly, I think this is Dennis's cover letter, right? Dennis, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So for my cover letter, I started off by saying that it's connected to my resume for Davis Surgical Research Facility that I applied for on Handshake. And I started off by saying I believe I'll be a strong candidate for the program. Then I talked about my education at my community college and how I've taken relevant coursework, as well as how as an incoming student, I'm excited to take upper division courses that will give me more knowledge and context into research, and I can use it for this and other future internships. And then I talked about how in my retail position that I worked at for 4 years, that it taught me skills like working in a team environment and communication. And I tried to apply it how it would be beneficial in the medical work environment. And then for this position, they also wanted experience with handling animals. So I talked about my experience with taking care of a cat at my retail job and all the things I did relating to that. And then last but not least, I talked about how, once again, that I think I would be a great candidate and how this would be a very important opportunity for me as I'm very interested in surgery. And I'm super excited to be in the Davis area with the opportunities that are out here. And I thank them for my time and signed my name.
Okay, and now we will move on to our final Q&A. So if you guys have any final questions, feel free to ask them. And like always, if you want to text it, Nam will read it out. And if you want to verbally say it, just raise your hand and we'll pick on you and you can unmute yourself.
Okay, Mitchell has a question, I believe.
Yeah, this I think might pertain more to the resumes, but in terms of references, are references relating to our academics, are those preferable or better than maybe past work experiences?
I would say you could have both. I think past work experiences are nice because that's kind of you in a professional environment, right? You're actually working with somebody and they know you in that manner, whereas a teacher would just know you as like a good student, right? So
Okay.
I might actually tend more with your actual like prior work manager or whatever.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, I agree with Sudev. Before I revised my resume and took out my references, I had one of my community college professors and then 2 of my managers for my retail job. Just because I worked with them for 4 years, so they would best know me and be able to give me a good recommendation if they got called by a lab.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And also, if you have like other questions where you want us to look over the resume and give out pointers, you can also email it to us and we'll be able to communicate with you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, so if there's no further questions, then that's the end of our third information session. Like I said before, this will be recorded. The slides will be also posted up on our website. That's trsociety@ucd.com. And just go to our events and you can see all our recorded, prior recorded sessions and along with this one. And you can download these slides to look at any time. Thank you again for taking the time to check us out. We really appreciate it. And I hope you guys attend our fourth one in 2 weeks.